Three questions video, I guess, response video, but probably have some extra stuff added on, but it's all sort of related, maybe, kind of, well, we'll see. A lot of different interesting subjects. Alright, well, anyway, Heroin Church, Luv ThatSoy, Luv ThatSoy, something like that. Anyway, asked 3 questions, so I'll try to answer them. First question is a little bit vague, just the economic impact of Trump's border war, or whatever it's going to be, his plan to unravel the local, anyway, trade agreements, and tax stuff going across borders, which, yeah, I don't know how you do that without creating things called inflation and all that kind of stuff. But I don't even know how you do it equitably in this environment. So if he taxes stuff going across the Mexican border, does that mean he's going to tax stuff coming from Japan or China or across the border from other places? Because otherwise it's pretty unequitable and non-competitive. So, it's sort of like his deals he's making with these companies to stay here. It's sort of like creating a monopoly when you start giving corporations huge tax breaks that other competing companies don't get for doing something. And that's sort of cheating, pretty much, entirely. So, yeah, no, I don't see anything good coming of it. So any kind of inflation is going to be a real problem because the budget will then explode. And with tax cuts and inflation at the same time, yeah, it's going to be insane budget deficits. And no doubt be used as an excuse to do all kinds of draconian, horrible things and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, nothing good's happening. Canada is apparently already in some trouble, I guess. I've just been noticing the, how much a Canadian dollar buys, like on eBay, and, sometimes you buy it in Canadian dollars and you just, it's kind of, $4 US, $6 Canadian kind of thing. It's kind of a, it was the same for a period there anyway, which was interesting. But anyway, so, yeah, Canada's not going to fare too well, I guess. But I don't think anybody's going to, Trump's just going to make a mess. It's kind of obvious. He thinks he's got some sort of business talent, and he doesn't have any of that. So it's going to be a mess. Like he's a big picture guy, and he's a one-picture guy, Trump. So yeah, I don't know what to say on it. But the idea that you can go backward in time, I mean, that's sort of what this is. It's just this idiotic notion that, that somehow you can pretend that if it creates some more, I'm sure whatever businesses stay here will be staying here under the provision that they're not obligated to pay decent wages, and that, they'll probably make very automated plants that reduce the number of employees and all that kind of crap. So, it's not gonna, you're not gonna, it's a world problem. You got to fix it in the world. You don't fix it in the world, you're gonna have a big problem trying to do it in isolation. So isolationism, or whatever you want to call it, ain't gonna work. Anyway, so then he asked a kind of a bizarre question, but what's the fair price to pay for a hooker or sexual toy aid, whatever. It really kind of depends on what you're, frankly, you get what you pay for, sort of a thing, right? So, I mean, if you want somebody who's concerned with your health and your welfare and all that kind of stuff, and is careful about that kind of stuff, then yeah, maybe you have to pay some more. So, but what do I think is fair? I mean, frankly, really just kind of depends, I guess. I would think it would always be unfair to pay less than, say, whatever, couple $100. I mean, let's say you're consuming 3 or 4 hours of somebody's time and travel expenses and whatnot. I mean, you pay any kind of professional those kind of rates, so yeah, that would be a minimum. But what what the hell do I know? Yeah, it's not a, you know, ideally it's not somebody, you don't want to be buying the volume discount. You know, volume discount is not a good idea. So, yeah, so it depends on what you're buying and how exclusive it is and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, you get what you pay for sometimes. You know, just kind of the way to look at it, I suppose. Anyway, so then his third question was something about, you know, if you could create the utopia, in terms of, you know, a virtual, mechanical kind of utopia, the utopia hat, and you put it on and it just, you just put your brain in some sort of bliss state. And there's somehow no cycle of violence required, in the sense that you don't have to go hungry to be hungry, something like that. And it's just a, you know, a constant state of proper feeding of your appetite, in a bottomless well kind of manner. Yeah, I'd say fine. You know, 10 years ago I might have been more interested in the possibility of finding some way to save my existence, and to say, yes, I would want to exist. But yeah, now I'm more humbled by a few more years of perspective, and it's the kind of fire you just don't play with, in my opinion. So I just to make sure the fire's out, yeah, I would sacrifice any of these extra ambitions and vote for the fail-safe. You know, it's no point in opening dangerous boxes. I stated, I'm not upset that the Martians aren't living in virtual reality and having fun. It's just an honest statement. I'm just not upset. And the fact that I'm not upset means that I can't rationally come up with a reason to think it matters when it's not me. And that is an indication that that's all, any affection for the creation or contriving some way to make it work is really just out of selfishness and out of a ego kind of nonsense, and it has nothing to do with anything real. And so I guess, you know, again, I would argue that I think the correct perspective is to be wary of one's personal interests and say, well, if I was doing this for them, okay, if I was doing this for the Islamics, or I was doing it for, find a group of humans that you really don't like too much, and then you'll start to realize, why am I bothering trying to make them happy? Why am I bothered with any of that crap? I'd rather they just didn't happen. You know, if I could erase their existence from history, I'd probably do that. If you give me an eraser, I could just make it go away. So why this pretense that any of us, you know, it's all just a subject of personal motivated, you know, I somehow need to exist kind of notion, and it really doesn't, you don't need to, and you certainly don't need to just merely exist in some sort of, you know, drooling gratification state that really has no substance, in a sense. It just isn't necessary. And again, it's, once you have that, you open the door to something going wrong. You know, the error code seeping in and just making a problem. So why don't grow trees and they can't catch fire? Something like that. Alright, so I guess that's it for that subject. I guess I'll talk some about this Bernie Sanders stuff and welfare. So, you know, I made some comments about what the real cost was, what I was attempting to get to, and of course people can't, you know, they don't understand the argument being made when you say something like, somebody working for it doesn't like to see somebody not working for it getting more than they can afford to do. They, you know, and they can't. and that's a real problem in the sense that as we're becoming a society of rich man, poor man, and very poor in the sense that entitlement kind of thing. And so yeah, my argument is that statistically we know that okay, a high school education costs $10,000 a year to acquire, so that's $120,000. Okay, right off the top, $120,000 has to be spent for each kid, and that's not including the special ed and all the corrections crap and all the other crap that goes with people who are generally speaking in poverty. They really don't. I mean, I'm as a fact, the deprivation becomes habitual, and you can see it in their children, and so it is a cycle, and it's really not it's a very negative cycle, and it's a fact, and it's really expensive. And then healthcare, I didn't realize, I knew the number was going to be high, but it's reached $10,000 per year of your life, technically. I mean, obviously most of that money is being spent later in life, but just, if you live to be 100 years old, you really are $1 million person in a sense. It's $1 million for your existence in healthcare costs. $1 million. I mean, and we live in a society where, like I said, our ability to be $1 million productive, to do $1 million worth of constructive work in the world, is so limited. It's kind of hard to defend the circumstance. And these, but these are the benefits. They don't count, right? It's all the social structural benefits, the things that, paying the cops to do the domestic violence thing, and all the other services that end up being part of this bullshit. I mean, the cost of even shoplifters, when it comes to even prosecuting them. So you not only have the expense of what they cost all the consumers, what they cost in terms of the price of doing business, then you have these added expenses that just even to prosecute them is costs so much more than anything you gain from it in terms of you get some deterrence value, but it's like writing traffic tickets. It's not really big money. I mean, it's certainly not profitable for the taxpayers. They're paying an awful lot to penalize somebody for speeding. So yeah, and so I think it's just relevant to the morbid atheist says, now, whether the poor should make their situation worse by breeding, they shouldn't. Well, see, he doesn't think this is the subject, and I think it is. And whether they should subsidize, and whether we should subsidize their reproduction, which we shouldn't, is a separate subject. See, to me, it's not a separate subject. It's fundamental to the subject because, sort of a news flash. It's really hard to get benefits if you're a single male without dependents. System doesn't like you much, and that's why a lot of the homeless are single males, because they don't really, the system just couldn't care less, and so we know that it is babies that are being used as the extortion for the entitlement. And I'm just saying, look, I'm not for cutting. I'm just for rational policy that where people acknowledge their condition. And I just think that there is a real problem that has been created where there are people who think they're entitled, and that's just not right. They're not humble at all. There's poor people who have no humility at all. They don't even think about the burden. They don't even think about who's paying their bills. They just think they're entitled, and that's all. I'm just talking about the rhetoric of the subject, not any overt politics. And I certainly would defend the idea of subsidizing sterilization and making it mandatory if you're going to receive welfare. You know, because obviously it's the kids that are very expensive, really expensive, hugely expensive. I mean, if you know, I'm just saying that if you're making $10 an hour and you see your neighbor with 2 kids, that's 20 grand. And if you were the only paycheck, you obviously can't cover that, if you get what I'm saying. So obviously it just doesn't work. Doesn't make any sense. You can't just pay the basic bills with the economy we have. So anyway, then that gets the whole rich or too rich and all that kind of crap. So anyway, so then Indifferent Sky did some more defending of Bernie, and you know, she pointed to his website, and his website doesn't give you any encouragement. And like I said, his words were kind of overt, and if you watch the Democratic primary, he was being more liberal than Hillary in terms of aggressively defending immigration and the rights of illegal immigrants, and you know, thought Obama deported too many people. So I'm just, you know, and this subject, I don't know what, I don't even know how to even convey my lack of ability to understand why people think it's a great idea to create all this cultural diversity, which means a bunch of language difficulties and everything else, and you know, ways of life, and just leads to a bunch of segregation. Why this is at all healthy or good for America. So I just don't see anything explaining that. That was another thing. I think the Morbid Atheist brought up something about the percentage of people. And again, this, you can't use percentage arguments. You know, like, well, most people on welfare are white, but you know, obviously there's still more white people just because of the, you know, the lagging demographics. Most of the babies born aren't white anymore, so the future won't be more white. Okay, so you know, that statistic is doomed to cease to exist as a statistic. But you know, by percentages, it's 16%. So and the kind of bad news is that the South American immigrants haven't done too well. I mean, they do work hard, but you know, 36% is a pretty high number for new arrivals. And certainly you can look at the black numbers, which are worse, but again, that what should the expectation be when most of them are raised in like the worst places in America? So there's no logic to thinking there would be any hope there. You know, very little hope. But the point is that yeah, you would expect that immigrants would do better than the outcomes of the worst places in America. If we take the worst places in America and we have an outcome, we would hope the immigrants would be doing better than that, not almost as bad. So that's my only point, is that obviously immigration isn't it isn't the best and the brightest. You know, it is the huddled masses, and it just ain't a huddled mass country anymore. There's no industrial revolution. It's just not the same world. And I you know, you're entitled to think that you're going to build a better America this way, but I don't think you have any chance of doing it this way. I mean, you know, no chance at all. Yeah. So anyway, let's see if there's anything else I need to respond to here. The election was decided by only 80,000 votes in the 3 swing states. Yeah, well, look, I mean, Trump didn't win the election, so, I mean, you know, and we know there were margins, but I'm just saying this whole Bernie Sanders is the savior thing, I just think is, I don't think his policy is rational, and So I mean, I don't know what to say. If the Democratic Party is going to be molded around Bernie Sanders, I'm saying you've kept almost all the bad stuff. I mean, you know, Hillary's big vice is she's too connected to corporations, and I'd almost argue that corporations aren't the evil here. It's the owners that are the evil, and that's just not being recognized, and certainly something not recognized by Bernie Sanders. Businesses by themselves are not an evil construct. It's the owners and the CEOs put in place by the owners that are the negative construct, and you can fix that. So I mean, you know, and then I've you know, it's just the people thinking that you can get to the rich man's wallet by taxing businesses are just stupid. Businesses don't pay the taxes. The consumers pay the taxes, or the workers have a salary cut. The profit has to be made. That's the way the markets work. The CEO is going to put in place who's going to make a profit. And if you try to tax it out of existence, then they'll just come up with some other way to make it, because they have to please the stockholders. So the only companies that are going to have their stock purchased are going to be companies that figure out how to make more profit than if you're going to tax it. So you're just defeating your own purpose by incentivizing even more draconian and desperate efforts to squeeze profit, which means more lying and cheaper product, you know, crappier products, and cutting corners and cutting employees and all of that stuff. So taxes on businesses, it's zero sum. It's a sales tax. It's not a tax on wealth. Not even close. And the fact that Bernie Sanders still thinks there means something as a way of making society equitable, he just doesn't get it. The businesses aren't the wealth. The owners have the wealth. And the owners are the ones you have to get the money from. You have to get the money back from. They've taken it out of the economy, and it's in the stock market. It's business taxes aren't going to take it out of the stock market. They'll just buy something else. So commodity prices will go up, or some other price will go up, but you can't get to wealth by taxing what the wealthy are going to buy, because they'll buy something else. Anyway, alright, so that's probably enough of a video. Sorry, I'm just kind of down. You know, I'm just having a hard time. Yeah. Because just too many things on my mind. Just too many videos I want to make. Too much. Just a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff here, and a lot of stuff out there. It's just too much stuff. But anyway, good stuff, some of it. And sorry, I'm just not. Just not. Don't have much enthusiasm. Yeah, I have some sort of interest, but I just don't have any energy for the project, so to speak, or something like that. I don't know, but anyway, I think that's all I need to. I mean, it needs to be done more elaborately, the whole discussion of the economic fixes. But I don't want to be. I don't mean to imply that I'm anti-poor people. I'm just implying that the way the economy is structured, and the way the payroll taxes are paid, and the way we finance things like Social Security, in the sense that the payroll taxers put $2 trillion into a fund, and then the rich people stole it for tax cuts. That kind of crap. Until you fix those things, this ain't gonna work. Yeah. Because you're just having poor people, you're taxing poor people to pay for poor people. It just doesn't make any sense. It's like Obamacare. You make the poor people pay for it. It just doesn't make any sense.